You ever get that feeling? That somewhere in a room you'll never enter, behind doors you'll never touch. People with more money than entire countries are saying your name. Yeah, I know that feeling. See? While you were trying to survive another day, paying bills, fighting silent battles, smiling in front of people who never really saw you. A group of billionaires sat at a long, polished table, laughing over expensive drinks, making a decision about you. Not because they know you, not because they understand you, but because something about you makes them uncomfortable. Maybe it's your resilience. Maybe it's the way you don't break. Maybe it's that dangerous thing called potential. They said, keep an eye on that one. People like that either change the game or break the system. The funny, isn't it? They ignored you when you were struggling. They laughed when you were alone. But the moment you started figuring things out, now you're a discussion topic. Because the truth is, and this is the joke nobody tells you, the world isn't controlled by the loudest people. It's controlled by the ones who watch quietly. And guess what? They've been watching you. Not when you were winning, but when you refused to quit. Not when you were strong, but when you were broken and still stood up. That's what scared them. Because they know something most people don't. A person with nothing to lose becomes impossible to control. So tonight, I want to tell you what decision they made, why your name came up, and why after today, you might never see yourself the same way again. Pause, because this story, it's not really about billionaires. It's about what happens when someone they underestimated finally realizes their own power. They saw you when you were struggling, and they felt comfortable. Comfortable because you looked like everyone else who tried and failed. Comfortable because you were doubting yourself. Comfortable because you were still asking for approval. People rarely feel threatened by someone who is still trying to figure out their own worth. Back then you were invisible to them, just another face in the crowd. Just another story they thought they already understood. When you were quiet, they thought you had nothing to say. When you were patient, they thought you were afraid. When you walked away from drama, they assumed you couldn't handle pressure. They mistook your self-control for weakness and your healing for hiding. The biggest mistake people make is thinking the process is the final result. They saw your unfinished version and thought that was your limit. There were days you questioned yourself more than they ever did. Nights where you fought battles in your own mind that nobody clapped for. Moments where quitting would have been easier than continuing. But what they never noticed was that every difficult moment was building something inside you. Every betrayal taught you awareness. Every failure taught you strategy. Every time you were underestimated, you learned to depend less on noise and more on focus. At first you were reacting to life. Now you are reading it. At first you were trying to prove yourself. Now you are improving yourself. That shift is what changes everything. Because the moment a person stops trying to impress the world and starts understanding it, they become dangerous in a way that has nothing to do with violence and everything to do with clarity. Awareness changes how you move. You start noticing patterns in people's behavior. You recognize fake support. You see how some people only show up when they think you are small enough to control. You start understanding that respect is often given after resistance, not before it. You begin to realize that the game was never about talent alone. It was about perception, patience, and positioning. You stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped arguing with people who were only interested in winning, not understanding. You started protecting your energy like it was currency. That's when everything began to shift, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, mentally, strategically. Now the same people who overlooked you start noticing small changes. Your reactions are different. Your words are fewer but sharper. Your presence feels calmer but somehow heavier. You no longer chase attention, and that makes people pay attention. You no longer seek validation, and that makes people question what you know that they don't. Awareness removes desperation, and nothing confuses people more than someone who is no longer desperate for acceptance. Because a person who is not desperate cannot be easily manipulated. A person who sees clearly cannot be easily deceived. A person who understands their value cannot be easily intimidated. What makes this transformation unsettling to others is that it didn't come with an announcement. There was no warning speech, no public declaration, just small, consistent changes, better decisions, less emotional reactions, more observation, more discipline. You started listening more than talking, watching more than reacting, thinking more than explaining. People can sense when someone is no longer predictable. Predictable people are easy to handle. Predictable people follow expected emotional patterns. But awareness breaks predictability. When you no longer react how they expect, they lose their sense of control. And when people lose control, they start paying attention. Some will call it arrogance because you stopped shrinking yourself. Some will call it attitude because you started setting boundaries. Some will say you changed because they benefited from the version of you that tolerated everything. Growth always looks like rebellion to people who were comfortable with your limitations. Now they watch differently. Not because you became louder, but because you became sharper. Not because you demanded attention, but because you stopped needing it. The greatest psychological shift happens when someone realizes they are responsible for their own direction. That realization creates a quiet confidence that cannot be faked. You understand now that being ignored was a hidden advantage. It gave you time to grow without pressure, time to learn without distraction, time to build without interference. While they were busy measuring you based on your lowest moments, you were slowly redesigning your mindset. Awareness also teaches emotional control. You no longer react to every opinion. You no longer feel the need to correct every false narrative. You understand that not every battle deserves your energy. This kind of discipline looks simple from the outside, but internally it requires strength most people never develop. The fear people feel is not about what you might do to them. It is about the fact they can no longer predict you. They can no longer label you easily. They can no longer assume you will stay in the same mental position they left you in. You became someone who thinks before moving, someone who studies before acting, someone who understands before responding. And awareness creates something rare: independence of thought. You start forming your own conclusions instead of borrowing popular opinions. You start questioning narratives instead of blindly accepting them. You start trusting observation more than rumors. That independence alone separates you from most environments. The same person they once dismissed is now someone they try to understand. Not because you asked them to notice, but because awareness has a presence. It shows in your posture, your patience, your timing, and your restraint. It shows in what you refuse to tolerate and what you refuse to chase. When you were quiet, when you stayed in the shadows, people thought it meant you were powerless. They thought it meant you didn't care, that you lacked vision, that you were just another face in the crowd. But patience is not weakness. Patience is strategy. Every moment you waited, every decision you delayed, every silence you held was like a seed being planted in the dark, unseen but not unfelt. People rarely see the work happening beneath the surface, the mental battles, the late nights, the relentless self-discipline. They see only what's obvious, what can be measured, what can be consumed quickly, and they mistake that surface for reality. You weren't hiding from the world. You were preparing for it. Every rejection, every dismissal, every mocking laugh only sharpened your focus. While they were busy reacting impulsively, seeking immediate gratification, chasing recognition, you were building an internal framework that no one else could touch. Every failure became a blueprint. Every setback became a lesson. Every underestimated moment became an advantage. This is what patience gives you: the ability to move later, smarter, stronger, without anyone noticing until the moment is right. When you stay patient, you observe more than you participate. You learn the patterns that others miss. You notice who speaks for power and who acts from principle. You notice the cracks in people's confidence, the inconsistencies in their words, the hidden motivations behind their actions. Awareness grows silently when you're patient. People mistake patience for passivity, but it's the calm before a storm they can't predict. And they don't realize that by the time you act, they will already be reacting to you, not the other way around. Patience is also resilience. It teaches you to endure without complaint. It teaches you to continue when everything inside you screams to quit. It teaches you to trust the process when the world doesn't recognize your efforts. And in that endurance, you develop a kind of power that can't be taken away because it isn't granted, it's built. It's forged in quiet moments, in decisions made away from the spotlight, in preparation that goes unnoticed, but is unstoppable when revealed. Most people want results immediately. They want recognition immediately. They want validation immediately. And that impatience keeps them predictable. Predictable people are easy to control, easy to manipulate, easy to dismiss. But when you are patient, your actions are deliberate. You choose when to speak, when to act, when to assert yourself. Your timing becomes precise. And timing is everything, because being early or late can change the entire outcome. Being patient also teaches self-control. You learn not to react to provocations. You learn not to surrender your energy to people or situations that do not deserve it. You learn that control over your own mind is more valuable than control over anything external. And as you master your own mind, people notice it, even if they cannot articulate why. There's a presence that comes with patience, a weight that people sense but cannot measure. While others chase chaos, you study it. While others argue over temporary victories, you plan long-term wins. While others burn themselves out with short-term ambitions, you build lasting foundations. And when the moment comes, when action is finally required, you are ready. Not reactive, not desperate, ready. That readiness is invisible until it's revealed, and revelation has a power that anticipation cannot match. Patience is also about choosing your battles. You stop wasting energy on things that do not matter. You stop fighting every war, and you start winning the ones that matter. You learn that not every insult deserves a response. Not every slight deserves retaliation, and not every opportunity needs to be seized immediately. That selectivity multiplies your effectiveness because it focuses your energy where it can create the largest impact. The quiet work of patience transforms your character. It builds discipline, fortitude, and clarity. You start understanding who you are, what you want, and how to achieve it without needing constant external validation. You see life as a chessboard, not a racetrack, and that perspective allows you to move in ways others cannot even imagine. You become impossible to manipulate because your attention is deliberate and your choices are intentional. And the most unsettling thing for people around you is that your patience makes you unpredictable in the best way. They expect you to react impulsively, to follow the patterns they have studied, to behave as everyone else does. But patience allows you to step outside those patterns. You can act calmly in chaos. You can wait while others rush. You can strike when they think the moment has passed. That unpredictability is your edge, and it is honed quietly, invisibly, relentlessly. Patience gives you perspective. It teaches you the value of long-term thinking, of preparation over impulsivity, of understanding over reaction. It turns setbacks into stepping stones and resistance into reinforcement. And when people finally realize what you've been building, it's too late to stop you, because the advantage was always in your control. The world underestimates patience because it is quiet, subtle, and often invisible. But those who master it understand it. It is the most dangerous kind of power there is. It is the slow, burning fire that ignites at the perfect moment, the hidden hand that moves with precision, the unseen strategy that outsmarts the obvious chaos. Those who understand patience understand themselves, and those who understand themselves cannot be controlled. Power notices those who refuse to break, and it's not the kind of power that shows up in headlines or boardrooms. It's the kind of power that whispers quietly in the background, the one that observes, measures, and waits for a crack to appear in the walls of complacency. When you refuse to break, when life piles pressures, expectations, and betrayals on you and you still stand, something shifts in the way the world sees you. People who have influence, people who wield wealth and authority, they notice subtle signs, things others miss. They notice endurance, resilience, and consistency, because those are the things you can't fake, no matter how loud you try to be. Refusing to break doesn't mean you don't feel the weight. It doesn't mean you aren't afraid. It doesn't mean you aren't overwhelmed or exhausted. It means you choose to move differently despite all of that. You learn to turn pain into strategy, disappointment into insight, and pressure into leverage. Every time life tries to bend you, you resist just enough to keep your shape, learning the angles, adjusting your stance, and developing an unspoken confidence that power can sense from a distance. They can't put their finger on it, but they know it's there, and that unease makes them wary. There's a difference between people who crumble and people who bend without breaking. Those who crumble allow circumstances to dictate their identity, their choices, and their direction. Those who bend learn the rules of the game without surrendering their core. They adapt, they calculate, they endure, and through this endurance, they create an invisible shield. That shield isn't just protection, it is a signal. It signals to the world that no matter the challenge, no matter the pressure, no matter the scrutiny, this is someone who will remain whole, someone who cannot be easily dismantled or overlooked. Refusing to break also teaches the art of timing. You see, resilience without patience is loud and noticeable. It's reactive and often fleeting. But when you refuse to break quietly, you accumulate understanding. You notice human nature in its rawest form. You understand that people who wield power rarely respect aggression or volume. They respect stability, vision, and control. Those who refuse to break develop a rhythm that others cannot manipulate, a cadence that signals both strength and unpredictability. And the moment they realize that rhythm exists, they can't ignore it. Power notices persistence. It notices when you keep moving while the world expects you to fall. It notices when your focus sharpens under pressure, when your determination grows stronger with opposition. Every challenge that you survive, every situation that threatens to overwhelm you, and you navigate without surrendering, every time you rise without complaint or spectacle, it sends a signal that cannot be ignored. People with influence understand the significance of that signal. They know that those who refuse to break are often the ones who quietly shape outcomes, redirect systems, and unsettle the balance of those who thought control was theirs. Refusing to break also cultivates an aura of self-reliance that power finds compelling. It demonstrates that your motivation does not come from external approval, that your direction is internally determined, and that your persistence is not contingent on luck or circumstance. This makes you unpredictable to people who are accustomed to controlling outcomes. They notice how your resilience forces them to recalibrate their assumptions about you, how it challenges their authority without confrontation, and how it quietly demands acknowledgement. There's also a psychological effect that comes with refusing to break. People begin to project their own insecurities onto you. They start questioning themselves because they assumed pressure would force you to compromise or fail. They realize that their conventional methods of influence, intimidation, or persuasion are ineffective against someone who refuses to break. That realization alone shifts the dynamic of power. Suddenly, the tables are subtly turning without any overt action from you. Endurance also generates respect, even when unspoken. People with power, people who think they hold all the cards, they respect those who maintain integrity under duress. They notice discipline, self-control, and the ability to act with intention rather than impulse. The act of refusing to break communicates more than words ever could. Communicates mastery over self, which is the foundation of mastery over circumstance. That mastery is magnetic. It draws attention, not because it seeks it, but because the world cannot avoid recognizing it. And in the quiet spaces where they are watching, evaluating, measuring, you gain an edge. Every time you refuse to break, you accumulate leverage. Every setback you survive adds to your understanding of human behavior and situational dynamics. Every challenge you endure enhances your capacity to maneuver in ways those who underestimate you cannot anticipate. Refusing to break is not simply survival. It is preparation. Preparation that is invisible until revealed. Strategy built beneath the radar, shaping outcomes before anyone realizes it. Those who refuse to break also inspire without trying. Observers notice consistency under adversity. They see how circumstances that defeat others only refine you. They witness the calm that comes from knowing your own boundaries, values, and purpose. And even those who would never admit it feel compelled to reconsider their assumptions. They see that breaking is optional, that resilience can be a choice, and that power itself is drawn to those who demonstrate it. And ultimately, refusing to break is more than resilience. It is transformation. It converts obstacles into tools, pressure into refinement, adversity into insight. It shifts the perception of those around you, including people who are accustomed to influence, control, and authority. They notice the difference between someone who reacts and someone who endures. They notice when endurance becomes mastery. They notice when quiet strength becomes undeniable presence, because power always notices those who refuse to break. The real threat is not your strength, it's your mindset, and most people never realize the difference. Strength is visible. It can be measured in action, in results, in sheer force. People can fear strength, they can try to overpower it, or they can mock it. But mindset is invisible. It operates quietly, internally, in ways that influence every choice you make, every response you give, every movement in life. It is not about what you can lift, how much you can endure physically, or how fast you can act. It is about how your mind interprets, adapts, and dominates situations before they even manifest. A strong mindset turns obstacles into opportunities. It sees failure not as an end, but as feedback, as raw material for improvement. It allows you to stay calm when chaos erupts around you, because you understand that panic is a luxury reserved for those who lack preparation. While others react emotionally, your mind calculates, observes, and predicts. While others are exhausted by the weight of circumstances, your mindset transforms pressure into clarity. That invisible transformation is the real danger to anyone who underestimates you. People often confuse mindset with optimism or confidence, but it is neither. Mindset is control over perception. It is mastery over thought patterns, over impulses, over the endless chatter in your own head. It determines whether you see problems as barriers or as stepping stones. It allows you to navigate complexity without losing your core. A person with strength, but without mindset, can crumble under deception, distraction, or manipulation. A person with mindset can bend reality itself without ever raising their voice. Your mindset also creates independence. You stop relying on validation, praise, or recognition because your internal compass is enough. You begin to filter noise, to identify what deserves attention and what does not, to distinguish between influence that matters and influence that distracts. That level of discernment makes you unpredictable. Not because you are chaotic, but because you operate on a plane that most people cannot reach. They measure with tools, assumptions, and reactions, but your mindset is a constant, invisible variable that they cannot control. It teaches patience, resilience, and strategy simultaneously. You no longer need to react immediately. You no longer need to prove yourself in every small skirmish. You learn to wait for the right moment, to act with precision, to leverage your position rather than your energy. People mistake calm for complacency, inaction for weakness, but your mind is always moving, always planning, always analyzing. That foresight is a weapon more dangerous than raw strength because it operates before anyone can anticipate it. Mindset also changes the way you perceive people. You stop being manipulated by emotion, by flattery, by intimidation. You understand motives, patterns, and intentions. You recognize when people are trying to provoke a reaction or test your limits. You understand that influence is often a game, and mindset allows you to play without losing yourself. That awareness isolates you from unnecessary conflict while giving you a tactical advantage in the conflicts that actually matter. And when the world begins to notice, it feels like a shock because they were only expecting to see what is visible. They expected you to be constrained by circumstance, reaction, and external pressure. They assumed strength would be tested through visible actions, predictable outcomes, and public challenges. But mindset operates invisibly, silently, turning perception into reality without ever appearing overtly aggressive. That unpredictability is what terrifies observers. They cannot measure it, they cannot anticipate it, and they cannot control it. A strong mindset also shapes your habits. It rewires your reactions, your choices, your priorities. It teaches you to conserve energy for meaningful battles and to release energy where it is wasted. It builds discipline that outlasts temporary motivation, perseverance that defies external circumstances, and clarity that cuts through distraction. People around you may notice success, but they rarely notice the internal architecture that created it, the constant calibration of thought that makes every action purposeful. It also inspires silently. Those who witness mindset in action see the difference between chaos and order, between reaction and response, between impulsivity and strategy. They see someone who moves through the world with intention rather than desperation. That alone draws attention, not because you demand it, but because presence shaped by a powerful mindset cannot be ignored. People respect what they cannot fully understand, and a sharp, disciplined mindset is often beyond comprehension. Mindset allows you to transform fear into curiosity, obstacles into lessons, and challenges into experiments. It teaches you that limitation is often self-imposed, and that control over perception grants freedom over circumstance. Strength may win battles, but mindset wins the war by designing the battlefield itself. It teaches you to anticipate, to manipulate probabilities, to act in ways that maximize leverage and minimize risk. That subtle advantage is invisible until it manifests, and when it does, it is unstoppable. Ultimately, The real threat is the way mindset protects, empowers, and evolves silently. It makes you untouchable in ways that brute force never could. It ensures you can endure what others cannot, outthink what others cannot, and outlast what others will abandon. Strength fades. Circumstances shift. People change. But mindset endures, and that endurance shapes outcomes long before the world even realizes the influence it holds. Mindset is the quiet rebellion, the invisible weapon, the unseen force that transforms potential into inevitability. They didn't decide your future. They only confirmed your potential, and that distinction is everything. So many people assume that those with influence, the billionaires, the decision makers, the ones who sit in rooms others will never enter, hold the ultimate control over what happens to you. They think their choices can define your life, your opportunities, your limits. But in reality, their decisions are only reflections of something that already exists inside you, something they recognize but cannot create, something you have been building quietly while the world was distracted. Potential is invisible until it is recognized, and recognition by others does not create it. It simply validates it. Your skills, your mindset, your resilience, your ideas, your capacity to endure and adapt. These were all there long before anyone took notice. While people are busy trying to impress the visible powers, the real work happens in silence. You've been forging yourself in ways that cannot be measured by wealth, influence, or status. They can observe patterns, track results, and make predictions, but they cannot manufacture what you have been developing internally. When they make decisions about you, they are usually trying to contain what they see as a threat or harness what they see as an asset. That is where potential becomes dangerous. It is not about what they think they control, but what you have already prepared yourself to become. They may call it attention, assessment, or strategy, but it is really a confirmation that you are no longer invisible, that you are no longer a variable they can ignore. The quiet work, the preparation, the endless persistence, they notice it now because it has reached a threshold that demands acknowledgement. Potential is not dependent on external approval. It exists whether people validate it or not, but recognition accelerates opportunity. When they make decisions about you, they are often confirming that your internal progress is now affecting external reality. Your preparation is intersecting with the wider world, and the consequences are unavoidable. The decision they make is not a gift, it is a mirror. It reflects what you already carry within: the capability, the creativity, the strategic thinking, and the endurance that cannot be fabricated. The dangerous part of potential is that it grows silently until it cannot be ignored. While others measure themselves against public achievements, your growth happens in private, in consistency, in learning, and in adaptability. When they notice, they may think they are shaping your path, but the truth is, the path was already being carved by your own choices, habits, and mindset. Their decision is simply a signal that the world is beginning to align with what you were already capable of achieving. When potential is confirmed by those with power, it creates a shift in perception, both internally and externally. Internally, you realize that your work, your struggles, your discipline, everything you invested in yourself has weight. Externally, people begin to recognize that you are capable, formidable, and strategic. That confirmation does not define you. It amplifies the reality that you were already in control of your trajectory. This amplification is subtle but transformative because it changes how you interact with opportunities, challenges, and alliances moving forward. Potential also challenges expectations. Those who underestimated you, ignored you, or doubted you are forced to reassess their assumptions. The decisions they make about you are often reactive. They are trying to understand the magnitude of what they see, but cannot fully measure. They may attempt to control, influence, or redirect your trajectory. But all they are really doing is acknowledging the inevitability of what you are becoming. Recognition cannot manufacture potential. It can only witness it. Your true power is that your potential is not granted. It is earned, cultivated, and constantly reinforced by your choices. Their decisions may validate, they may attempt to influence, but they do not create your capacity. It is a force independent of opinion, wealth, or authority. It grows with every challenge you overcome, every skill you refine, every moment you remain resilient when others crumble. The more they notice, the more it confirms that your internal work has surpassed any external limitations they could impose. Potential also carries responsibility. Once others recognize it, you are no longer invisible, and you are positioned to influence outcomes beyond yourself. That recognition is a mirror showing not just what you can achieve for yourself, but what you can impact in the world. Their decision may create pressure, expectation, or scrutiny, but it also highlights that you are capable of operating at a level that requires intentionality, focus, and strategy. How you respond to that acknowledgement defines the next stage of your growth. Finally, understanding the difference between decision and potential empowers you to navigate life differently. They may attempt to predict, control, or manipulate the narrative, but they cannot replace your preparation, your persistence, or your vision. Their acknowledgement does not create your reality. It signals that your internal capabilities are becoming visible in the external world. That confirmation, rather than being a limit, becomes a catalyst. It shows that your potential was real all along, and now the world is forced to acknowledge what you have been quietly building, which is unstoppable, because it was yours before anyone else knew it existed.